Liz Collin here. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Liz Collin Reports, a place for truth and meaningful Minnesota conversations. On the podcast today, we are welcoming another new member to our Alpha News team. Caryn Sullivan is an award-winning columnist, author, and a national speaker. She truly is an inspiration, and we are excited to have her join us today. Caryn, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And let's start with your background because I know your resume is quite impressive. A lawyer, a journalist, an author. But yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, I suppose at the beginning, in terms of my career, graduated from William Mitchell back in the day when it was just William Mitchell, and began the practice of law and had been in a couple of different positions, was ultimately working as a contract partner at what was then the Oppenheimer law firm. When my son, Jack, was diagnosed with autism, and I was 5 months into a pregnancy with our daughter, Julia. As much as I enjoyed the practice of law, I was sort of terrified by this news and not knowing anything about autism, but realizing that this was kind of a life-changing word and diagnosis. I stepped away from the practice of law thinking I might go back to it at some point in time, but never was able to make my way back. So as I, went through many years of trying to navigate this new world of autism at a time when very little was really known or understood to be true about it, there were a lot of different theories. I found my way to my computer one day when Jack turned 16, and I sat down and I just composed an essay based on how I was feeling on his 16th birthday. And I sent it to Mike Burbach, who ran the editorial page, the opinion page for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And he ran it, and he put my email address on there. And I got all these emails from people saying, thank you for sharing your experience, because your experience is my experience, but I'm not able to put it into words in the way that you are. But now I can send this to other people so they have a better understanding of what my life is like. So I kind of went, And so I wrote another one, and Mike ran it and kind of the same reaction. And so I wrote a few pieces initially about autism, but I felt like I had really lost myself into that whole world. And it was really challenging to live it day in and day out. And I just knew that I couldn't become like a warrior mom, like some other moms who were writing and speaking and making advocacy or, sharing of information about autism, their life's work. So I veered off into all sorts of different directions, and over the years met a lot of great people and had some wonderful experiences, and just was, given free rein to write what I wanted on just a contributor basis.
And you talk about, your life going off in a different direction. Certainly one you also didn't have planned was a tragic turn in 2009. But share with our listeners and our viewers what happened then.
Well, even leading up to 2009, we had the autism diagnosis that, was really the focal point of the family until 1998 when my husband, Ted, at a very young age, sustained a heart attack after running. And he ended up having a lot of procedures over the years because of his heart condition. In 2003, I was diagnosed with breast cancer and was successfully treated for that. And then shortly thereafter, our daughter Julia was diagnosed with a rare disease which required a bone marrow transplant. So I really became the family medical crisis manager for years, lots of hospital appointments, lots of hospital hours logged with Julia in particular, and, became very comfortable in the medical arena advocating for myself and my family, but was not prepared for what happened on December 15th of 2009. Everyone in the family, my two older stepkids, my son Jack, and I were all out of state, and our daughter Julia was home alone. when her dad was taken to the ER because he had suffered what turned out to be a fatal heart attack. So that was obviously a very significant and life altering event for myself and my kids.
For good reason. And you've been very candid about all of these things that you have experienced. And what I think is amazing, you've been on this journey to help others cope ever since, writing about your own journey, helping us all through our own in a way. And that's what helped you write this book that I just finished. I'm a big fan.
Yeah,
But even the name of it, I think, is very touching, and how that came to be. It was a conversation you had with a priest.
right. In the spring of 2010, some friends invited me and my friend Anne, who also became a widow when her husband died of a heart attack 2 months later. And so we went to St. Thomas Academy for the annual fundraiser, and my friend Peg introduced me to a priest and said, "You might have some things to talk about." And so we sat down, and as I write in the book, I don't know if it was the 2 glasses of wine that I had that sort of emboldened me. And here I was with this complete stranger, and I started just sort of pouring out, all of these things that had happened over the years and asking the questions that I had been struggling so much with. Whether it was, why did I survive my cancer and Ted died from the heart attack? Because I always felt like he was the favorite of the kids. And, why were some people so incredibly helpful and then others really very hurtful? So there were all sorts of things that I'd been dealing with in the months leading up to this chance encounter. And Father Johnson, just looked at me and said, "I can't explain to you why all these things have happened to you and your family, but I can tell you that when faced with adversity, we all have a choice. We can be bitter or we can be better." And that conversation was such a gift to me and such a game changer because I like things to be in neat little frameworks and to have a lot of clarity if I'm able to. It's the ambiguities of life that really, kind of send me over the edge. But that was just really clear.
So Bitter or Better becomes the name of your book. And I know when I read it, the line that stuck out to me right away was from your mom, but that was, "Life isn't fair. Don't be a victim." Something that she seemed to tell you and your siblings quite a bit, but it also seems like something you've taken to heart.
Yes. No, she couldn't have prepared me better with those words because there have been so many things that have happened, from my childhood on, where it would have been very easy to fall into that mindset. But it was a great tie-in to the whole idea of you can be bitter or you can be better when life throws you curveballs, and everyone has curveballs. That's just part of life's experience.
And speaking of curveballs, I guess it's a good time now, Karen, to talk about your transition to Alpha News. But you admitted that
Yes.
you went dark for a while. But explain why and your reasonings for that, for leaving the Pioneer Press.
Sure. Well, I think that the whole experience starting in the spring of 2020, threw me for a loop like it did a lot of people. It was one thing to, suddenly have to be in your home and not be able to see your family, or spend holidays together, to have to wear a mask and clean off your mail and your groceries and all of that. And then, of course, when we had the situation with George Floyd, and suddenly, we have people marching on the freeways, and yet you can't go to church, and elderly who can't see their loved ones. Things just didn't connect, and I just need things to connect. And I had things that I wanted to say and questions that I wanted to pose and points that I wanted to make, and suddenly it wasn't as easy to do that because we had slid right into this whole phenomenon of cancel culture, and it was no longer okay for people to say anything that was on their minds. And uh, there was just too much that was just throwing me off kilter. And so I just decided that if I didn't have anything positive to say. If I couldn't really add anything to the conversation, then I just needed to step away. And so that's what I did. And it's been difficult because I've really prided myself in, on being a person who stays fairly well informed. But there's been so much heaviness in the world, and so much, so little clarity, that's been really unsettling for me. Um, so I just needed time to just kind of sort through and figure out, what to do. But every so often, I would meet someone who would say, "You're such a great writer. That's your gift." And so over the last number of months, I really was grappling a lot with, like, what is my purpose now? For a long time, I felt like I had a lot of difficult experiences, starting with my childhood all the way up into my 50s. And I felt like I can reconcile these experiences by um, having a mindset of there's purpose in the pain. And if I can help other people to navigate their challenges, then there's some value in what I've gone through. But when I couldn't say anything of value anymore, I felt like I had to just be quiet.
And I think that's where our lives paralleled a bit too. I think we hit it off when we were finally able to meet. But even your last column, I think, resonated with so many of our readers. You called it "Posing the Question: How are we better?" So it's this reflection, as you're talking about, on the last couple of years. Beautifully written, as always, but also kind of, I think, a bit difficult to reflect on. There's some heavy stuff in there, as we've been told by many messengers. We've kind of trusted along the way.
Right.
But what is it that you wanted readers to take away from that piece, Caryn?
That was my first step towards being more courageous. And I was inspired by you and others who started to speak up and sort of question the narrative and um, shine a different kind of light on stories. And so I wanted people to think about, like, are we okay with what's going on? Because under the cover of COVID, so many major societal changes have been going on. And it's like you're in a pinball machine and your head's going back and forth, and wow, there's this and there's this and there's this. And we haven't been able to get together and talk about things because under COVID, we weren't able to do that. And so now I feel like we're emerging more. I definitely feel like, I'm over this and moving forward. And so as people get together, I wanted them to think about, like, really, are you okay with this? And how are we better as a society because of the things that are going on? And let's try to have a respectful debate if we can, if we don't see things eye to eye. But let's take some control back over what's going on while we still have the chance. And being that it's a year where we've got a lot of elected officials up for a reelection, or new players on the scene who want to be at the table, it's a really important time for us to pay attention as citizens and exercise our right to vote.
And I'm right there with you. I think so many people feel that way, like, let us out of the pinball machine at this point, and let's talk and try to make sense of all that's happened. Share with our listeners, though, what is next from you? What can they expect as you continue writing for us here?
Well, I want to continue to look at the things that have happened, are still happening, potentially could happen, and just encourage people to think about what's going on. So for example, um, early on with COVID, we were told, trust the science. And I did. I'm a rule follower, I'm a compliant person. But it became pretty clear to me, as a person who pays attention to communication, that uh, the communication around COVID has been an epic failure. We have so many inconsistencies in what we're told to do and what the policymakers are doing themselves, things don't align, we're told now, and because I'm about to take a trip on an airplane, this is, close to home for me, wear your masks for 2 more weeks on the airplane, but we've got people who are crossing the southern border, who aren't being tested, and we don't know what kind of state that they're in. Um, Finally, kids are being able to remove their masks. Why are 5-year-olds wearing masks? Masks are supposed to be really helpful, but only Dr. Osterholm says if they're N95 or K95. Most people I see are wearing paper masks or cloth masks. So, let's stop and use our brains. I feel like because we have been living in such a rampant culture of fear, we've stopped thinking clearly. So many things are driven by emotion and not by intellect. And so I want to encourage people to re-engage their brains and think about things, and how much control are you willing to give up? How much do you want to retain? And how are those choices going to impact your life and future generations?
That's right. Let's make common sense common again. I think that's a good point, Caryn.
Yes.
Award-winning columnist, author, and we are happy to say new Alpha News columnist, Caryn Sullivan. Thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Caryn. And again, that'll do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We will be back soon to keep meaningful Minnesota conversations going. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or any other podcast platform. To stay up to date on Alpha News, sign up for our free daily newsletter on our website. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.